Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stablecoins Are Killing It, episode number 6. I'm Lou Kerner with Crypto Mondays, now in VR, coming to you from San Francisco. We've got a great show for you today, featuring Dr. David Zhao with Wanxiang blockchain and China's central bank digital currency initiative, and Thibaut Sahaghian with Multis. I'd like to welcome our panelists, and each of our speakers are going to share their thoughts on stablecoins for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time opening up to questions from the audience. So if you have a question, there's a Q&A tab on Zoom, so use that to ask your questions, and if we're going to want to answer your question, we will actually make you a panelist, so you'll be able to ask the question yourself and interact with the panelists themselves. We're going to record these calls and post them on YouTube. We also do a blog post about the lessons learned from the call. And with that, I'd like to start the call with Dr. David Zhao. David?
Hi, Lou. Yeah, nice to meet you.
To be able to share your screen?
Sure. Yeah, I'm ready to share the screen.
Terrific.
Okay. No.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, sure.
All right.
Okay, sure.
Terrific. You ready to start?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So hello everyone, and it's my great pleasure to present here today. So my topic is fiat-backed stablecoin, because this is a framework to understand not only central bank digital currency, but also stablecoin like Libra. So first, we just summarize some of the methodology. So we see there are two pillars for the methodology. First, we use blockchain as a financial infrastructure. Second, we use economic mechanisms to link token values to fiat currency. There are several things we need to consider. First, how to use blockchain and what's your value pegging mechanisms. Second, so is a stable coin backed by full reserve or fractional reserve? And we see lots of practice and in this area. So for the stable coin, is this just a payment instrument, or is it a monetary instrument? Because in regulation, they will have very different implications. We can also summarize the basic structure and the rules of this stable coin. First, we need a trusted issuers, and this issuers is an institution. It will issue stable coin backed by fiat reserve. So if you look at the balance sheet of the trusted issuer on the tables, and it needs to follow 3 rules. The first rule is the one-to-one issuance rule. That means tokens are backed one-to-one by fiat reserve. Some people also call this full reserve. The second rule, of course, is the one-to-one redemption rule. And the third rule is the most important one. It's called credibility rules, because token issuers must prove that it has all the fiat reserve. So normally it will be audited by a third-party companies and full disclosure information, just to make sure that the authenticity and the adequacy of the fiat reserve. But there is one very special case. So if the central bank is the issuer, just think of a central bank digital currency. There's no need for credibility rule, because naturally we will trust the central bank. And I think it's on all the stable coins in the market, like USDC and USDT and the central bank digital currency can be understood with this methodology and the basic structure and the core rules. So let's talk about the DCP in China. It's the digital currency of the Chinese central bank. DCP stands for digital currency and electronic payment. The Chinese central bank doesn't have a white paper for DCP, but if you look at the speech given by central bank leaders, and you can find some key design features of the DCP. And first, DCP is kind of M0, just monetary base. So its issuance is backed by 100% reserve, and it will pay no interest rate. So some people will ask, so since it's issued by central bank, why should it require 100% reserve? And this is a very important part to understand the DCP. And in DCP, there is a rule, a very important rule, just to make sure that the issuance and the redemption of DCP will have no impact on the total amount of central bank money. And to meet this requirement, the Chinese central bank introduced an equivalent exchange between commercial bank deposit reserve and DCP. As we know, commercial bank deposit reserve is also kind of M0, and it's a liability of the central bank to the commercial banks, and it's set on the balance sheet of the central bank. So just look, suppose a Chinese bank, if it wants to issue and let's say 100 billion and DCP, and the central bank has to freeze 100 billions of the deposit reserve, and at the meantime give the commercial banks 100 million DCP. And in this way, the M0, the total amount of M0 doesn't change, but there is a transfer between the deposit reserve and the DCP. So if the commercial banks wants to redeem DCP, and the central bank will give unfreeze the deposit reserve. And DCP follows the traditional two-tier bank account system. That means, so there will be a wholesale part and a retail part. The wholesale part consists of the transaction and between central bank and the commercial banks. And so once the commercial banks get DCP from the central bank, and commercial banks can distribute the DCP to retail users. So Chinese people and Chinese companies will use either cash or bank deposit to buy DCP from the commercial banks. So DCP is not issued directly from the central bank to the public. It's issued through the intermediation of the commercial bank. So in this way, DCP has very limited impact on the commercial bank systems. Otherwise, commercial banks will be will be much impacted. And DCP follows so there is a very important term in China. DCP is follow the loose account coupling model, and is also centrally managed. So what's the meaning of the loose account coupling model? So the central bank gives an explanation. So like cash, DCP circulation does not depend on account and is anonymous. So essentially, this means DCP is kind of a token, but it's not a token inside the blockchain. Because the DCP, as a core of the DCP system, there is a registration center. This center is based on traditional centralized method. And it's like a digital coinage center. And however, it doesn't use blockchain. So you can say that DCP has no relationship, has no relationship with blockchain. However, the central bank is discussing that use blockchain to give people the access to check the authenticity of the DCP online. And we, at the following chart, I just show the two-tier system and the inner structure of DCP. The left one just show the whole. This is the wholesale component, right? And this one is the retail component. And this is what DCP looks like. It has a number, it has amount of money, it has the information of its owner, and it has the information of the issuer to bank signatures. So DCP also has some space for smart contract. It is called application extension and programmable script. But in the early stage of DCP, those smart contract won't be activated in the DCP. So, and this two charts show
David,
hello?
David,
Hi.
who's it anticipated that that we'll be able to write smart contracts? Will that be open, or will that just be smart contracts that the government writes?
I think there will be so I think people will propose, the commercial banks and payment companies will propose some smart contract, but the smart contract must be approved by the central bank because before it can be implemented. So
Okay.
it's easy to imagine that there will be different layers of smart contracts. For the most important smart contract, it must be standardized and approved by the central bank and be thoroughly studied and tested. But for some smart contract on the application layer, I think the commercial banks will have some flexibility. So.
Thank you.
Okay, so these two charts show the issuance and the redemption of DCP, and it's basically the transfer between the bank deposit reserve and DCP. And the most important part is this chart. It shows the transfer of DCP. So how central bank can process and record DCP transactions and can update ownership information. So if you look at this chart, it's very similar to the UTXO model of Bitcoin. So we can summarize the DCP's key features. First, the loose account couplings just means the token models, because if you look at the work of the BIS or IMF, central bank digital currencies has two models, either the account model and the token models. So the Chinese central bank choose the token models. So even DCP doesn't use a blockchain like Libra, but if you look at the key features of DCP, such as no double spending, anonymity, and security, transferability, divisibility, and programmability, is very similar to a token, but it's not a token inside a blockchain because it exists in a centralized ledger. But this ledger is based on the UTXO models. So this is what the PBOC, the Chinese Central Bank, will manage the DCP registration center. This center, you can just imagine this like the blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain, but just with one miners, just the central bank. So the central bank doesn't need to run consensus algorithms, and it will be very efficient for the public. And people need to use on DCP wallet to own and use DCP. And the core of this wallet is also a pair of public and private keys. It will show some controlled anonymity, but to open this DCP wallet, people need to go through a KYC process. And then we have the DCP transactions. It will be by it will be cross-border by nature. Yeah. Next, we'll use my remaining
And
time.
David,
Hi.
who will be able to get a wallet and be KYC?
Literally, I think everyone can own a DCP wallet, not just the Chinese residents. Like foreign people and foreign companies can own DCPs, but they need to go through, for example, there are some layer of the KYC requirement. For example, you can just download the DCP app from the Apple Store and register an account and without provide any identity information. So in these scenarios, and the central bank will put some restrictions on the DCP you can own in your wallet. So if you provide your mobile number or your identity number, you will have bigger and you are allowed to own more DCP. So if you go to a Chinese central bank and to open a DCP wallet, and literally speaking, there will be no limitation on how much DCP you can own. Yeah. So it's a so different layer of the KYC process. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's then talk about the stable coins like Libras, and we can see the Fiat Reserve plays a very important role in stable coins. So first, it needs to guarantee the value of stable coin. Second, it's just to ensure that the user will receive fiat currency when they redeem stable coin. Third, if we look at the Fiat Reserve, it's not in the form of cash. It's not a pile of cash. It's managed as an asset portfolio and held by custodian banks. So there will be market risk and liquidity risk, right? If you want to liquidate Fiat Reserve, you need to take some time, or sometimes you will incur some loss. And so there will be investment return as well as downside risk. So theoretically speaking, there exists a possibility of run on stable coins. For example, if the Fiat Reserve is under collateralized, and the user will redeem stable coin in a great amount, and the issuer will be forced to liquidate Fiat Reserve. So if that happens, there will be a fire sale of reserve asset, and asset value will drop again, and this will make the Fiat Reserve more under the water. So that's why, and if we look at the case of Libra, that's how the government regulates stablecoin. First, you can use cash as a reserve, but this is not the physical cash. In the future, there will be CBDC. You can just imagine that sometimes in the future, Libra can use DCP as a reserve, and there will be no credit risk and custodian risk. Second, restriction on the risk takings. The reserve will be managed as a pool of as a monetary fund. And three, there will be restriction on redemptions, like the redemption stays and early redemption haircuts in Libra. Lastly, there will be kind of some similar to over collateralization requirement, like the capital buffers in Libra. So one last point I want to mention is, so will there be stable coin with fractional reserve? I think this is possible in terms of economic mechanisms. Because of the rule of large numbers, and a fractional reserve can meet redemption requirements under most circumstances. So if you look at the case of USDT, that is what happens. But will the fractional reserve stable coin have some kind of lender of last resort support? But in terms of law and regulations, that will be very challenging, because a full reserve stable coin backed by full reserve is just a monetary, is just an instrument, a payment instrument. However, stable coin with fractional reserve is a monetary instrument, and there will be money creation, and this will have very deep implication on monetary sovereignty and and they will also be more susceptible to run. And the stablecoin issuers will have more and higher moral hazard because it always wants to lower the fractional ratio. Yeah. So that's all I want to share today. And thanks for time and patience. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for that. That was terrific. And Thibaut, you can unmute yourself and hopefully use your video camera as well. Hey, Thibaut.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Super excited to be here. Thank you so much for this presentation. So, you know, I actually think this is really interesting to start with, you know, a new kind of primitive, right? The kind of primitive that we're going to use, multis, you know, we're going to build upon those stablecoins. Different models could be used and implemented, but basically the idea is to build on top of that. So I'm actually think it makes a lot of sense now to talk about, you know, the upper layer, which is the application layer, in our case. You know, I guess I have a presentation that I can share. You know, it's pretty much like a generic presentation I like to use to introduce multis. Essentially, we can make the transition with stablecoins because that's the reason, you know, for being here. If that makes sense, Lou.
That would be terrific.
Fantastic. Let's do this. All right.
So you've got the screen share button.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So is it working now? Only host, all panelists.
Okay, hold on a minute. Just a moment. Sure. You should be, you're the host, so you should be able to share. There you go.
Fantastic. All right. So, you know, in one sentence, what we're building is pretty simple. We're building a banking account for companies to help them run business with both cryptocurrencies, especially stablecoins, and traditional currencies. I'll get back to that. So maybe you know, a few words on you know, on the backstory very quickly. So we've been in this. So my co-founder and myself, Theo, we've been in the space for you know, a couple of years now. Initially, you know, we come from a very B2B and you know, corporate investment banking background. So we dived into the crypto space, and you know, we've seen this incredibly, you know, rapid pace of development. You know, Ethereum and blockchains have developed super rapidly over the past years, but there's always been this kind of frustration about how do I manage properly my assets, from, you know, various kinds of tokens to stable coins and, you know, even NFTs now. It's very hard for a company to actually, you know, use a solution to properly manage funds. So that's the reason why we started Multis, right? We wanted to build a very convenient business wallet for companies to actually use it as part of their business. You know, very quickly, because we're all aware of different crypto risks, but the main pain points we saw was basically you're exposed to, because you don't have a bank, you know, especially with decentralized versions of stablecoins, you don't have a bank to basically, you know, help you go back to mistaken transactions or get your funds back. You have to be extra careful about social risk, which is the risk that you know, you must be very careful about with your team. That's your team. That's basically founders running around with the money. Same thing goes with technical risk. If you're putting all your funds in a custodian solutions, you need to be extra careful about who you are giving custody to. And I mentioned non-reversibility, which is a huge change of paradigm in terms of, you know, transactions. And similarly, so once you know, we've discussed the risk, there's the fact that, again, it's super hard to run business with crypto. You cannot run payroll. It's very hard to track company payments with a single version of the truth, and, you know, have it audited by your accountant, for example. And there's no way, and here again, stablecoins make a lot of sense. There's no way for you to earn treasury. So, you know, with this in mind, we just wanted to basically have, that's supposed to be a panda waving. But essentially what we wanted to do is to build a banking account to help entrepreneurs of the world to use cryptocurrencies, stablecoins, to run business with it and have access to the same features of a proper business bank solution. in a nutshell. It's all about storing your assets. It's all about, optimizing your treasury. It's all about spending it to run operations, run a payroll, collaborate with your partners. And it's all about playing with the, having access to different kind of tokens that you can use. One of the key things, and I think a lot of people in the stablecoin world actually agree with this vision, is that we wanted to provide business banking features, but without the custody. So in a sense, we're willing to provide, Web3 innovation, which is very cheap, instant services with this blockchain as, the settlement layer. But at the same time, we strive to provide a very unique UX, which should be at least 10 times better than existing solutions. Because in the end, no matter, how fast your transaction can be made, if you have a clunky UX, and that's a key issue in the space today, users won't switch. For crypto to break out of crypto to go mainstream, you need to provide a unique experience, which is at least 10 times better than what existing today. So that's a little bit about what we're building. One of the key aspects of Multis is the hybrid technological stack that we're building, based both on cryptocurrencies, stablecoins as a primitive, and the more traditional fiat features. The vision here is really much to leverage what is called composability, the fact, putting together different pieces of smart contracts. I'll mention some of them, the way we're using, to highlight the way we're building our stack, and, bridging them with more traditional banking features. So maybe, quite quickly, 3 main pillars to build a solution as the perfect vessel for crypto-based transactions. The first thing is that you need a robust solution to secure your assets in a self-custodian fashion. So we chose to go with a multi-signature wallet, which is essentially a smart contract where you lock funds with a built-in approval workflow system. So you need several funders to sign transaction with their own individual private key for the transaction to happen. In that sense, you don't need a custodian to protect you from the social risk I mentioned a little bit earlier. So that's what the multi-signature wallet is. So I mentioned self-custody, risk mitigation as well, because you have basically the 4 eyes principle. But what is really interesting with this kind of smart contract is the fact that it is natively, it enables natively key recovery, which means it simplifies key management. You lose your key, well, that's fine. Somebody can invite you back to the wallet, and you can access back to your funds to run business. Last thing I want to mention here is that contrary to a lot of solutions in the space today with the USB stick like Ledger or others, it is a wallet which is software based, which means you can natively, you can use it from a computer everywhere. It's running 24/7. The only thing you need is a bandwidth. And it's smart contract based, which means you can very easily interact with protocols, with DeFi protocols running with stablecoins. So that's the next topic I want to quickly touch base on. I won't go to the demo, but basically the idea is multi-sig is to have the same UX experience of a bank in a self-custodian fashion with peace of mind. You don't need to care about your money. We had to deal obviously with our frictions, transaction fees that we got rid of. I'm not going to cover that unless there is a specific question on that, obviously. But basically, again, we're striving to provide the same user experience as any neobanking solutions. The only difference being that we're based natively on crypto, on this crypto infrastructure that we're building. Let me show you an example of the way we're building DeFi. First, why DeFi? Well, because we can actually put together different pieces of software and assemble them in a way to provide actual banking utilities. So, if you look at the space today, if you look at DeFi, you'll see that a lot of the protocols are built for trading usage. You'll see that, for example, a lot of the transactions are actually stablecoin transactions are actually it's all about pair trading, not so much about actual spending. That's one of the reasons is that those DeFi protocols are super hard to put together. So that's our job to basically stick them, to be the glue, and to provide this experience that, again, must be 10 times better. Now, the cool thing about DeFi is that because of the permissionless nature of the network, of the technology, anyone can jump in and start building, new features and new product that we can basically pick and choose for the best, again, services to be provided to provide to our users. There's this, there's always this expression called money legals in the space. So that's, it's kind of pretty much, I mean, that's a good image. We're basically putting different kind of bricks together to build a whole infrastructure, crypto infrastructure from stack. And we making all those protocols, easy to access in one hit, in one click. Now, here's an example of the way we're using crypto to build a stack. So as you can see, there's the Ethereum protocol. The Ethereum blockchain could be, we're pretty much agnostic. We just started to build with Ethereum because that's where there are the most DeFi protocols and stablecoins out there. But that's essentially the settlement layer. That's key. Now we're putting those bricks together. So you can see there's the Gnosis brick, which is the multi-signature wallet I told you about. There's this, what we call token protocol. So the stablecoins. And there is Compound in that case, because we're building a savings account for a company to optimize treasury. So this is the lending protocol. Again, all of these bricks exist in a standalone fashion, but it's very hard to use. So we put them together to resemble a proper banking, interface. So that's the way we're building it. And that's the way we do it for all the other features that we can see here. That's another example with token swaps. Again, similarly, existing bricks like the multisig, which is one of the pillars of the solution, and then you connect it to a Kyber network in that case. So one of the main use cases for our solutions is actually to move from Ethereum to stablecoins, chiefly USDC, and then back to Ethereum or even DAI in our case. And as you can see, there are many bricks that we're putting together, again, to provide banking services. Nexus Mutual is one of the ones we're super excited about, because basically one of the key things you have in a fiat space today is a guarantee to cover FDIC cover, for example, up to $100,000. Well, if our users have 100,000 worth of stablecoins, USDC mostly, well, we need to provide some kind of cover for that. Like smart contract cover, for example. If anything happens to the code, well, you need our users basically want their fund back. So we're pretty much we're super excited by this thing. So maybe before highlighting a little bit more the vision, I wanted to talk about the use case we have and why we think stablecoins are a game changer from an application.
Thibaut? Yeah,
yep.
I mean, if you could quickly go through the use case, because we've got a lot of questions that we want to get to.
Yeah,
great.
Use case, yeah. Definitely. So, as a bank, we believe that a bank should essentially fulfill three roles. The first one is to sell your crypto assets. The second thing is to help you earn interest on that, basically optimize your assets, make them grow. And the third thing is you need to be able to spend them to run your business. So, quite logically, our main use cases revolve around this. Now, if you look at the most rapidly growing use cases today for companies, it's cross-border payments. That's why stablecoins is such a game changer for us. We have companies paying staff abroad, and COVID again highlighted. We have the huge boost in terms of transaction due to COVID because a lot of companies started hiring people remotely. And outsourcing to developing agencies where you can actually pay them in stablecoins. So DAI and USDC have been, increasingly being used in our platform to pay vendors and staff abroad. This is by far today the most widely used, the biggest use case for Multis. We're just the perfect vessel for companies to use stablecoins to send money instantly across borders with no fees. That's key. The second use case we see is a treasury investment, just simply because you see in the traditional space that you actually have to pay for a bank to store your assets, your cash. Well, in the crypto space, thanks to DeFi and protocols like Compound or others that we're investigating, it's a very convenient way to earn up to, depending on market dynamics, obviously, but up to 5% on your idle cash. Again, on stablecoins, which means, especially with USDC, you have, the way the protocol is designed is that your principal is never at risk. So that's a second huge use case. And when you think about it, what really excites us about Multis is the fact that cryptocurrencies and stablecoins just enables us to provide investment tools, treasury investment tools to companies that were just locked away those tools in traditional banking system. If you want to hire an asset manager to optimize your fund, well, you need to have a huge amount of money in the bank account, right? Which is not the case for 90% of SMBs out there. So we provide very simple and accessible tools based on stablecoins and cryptocurrencies to make the most of the funds.
Okay, that's terrific. Thanks a lot, Thibaut.
Yeah.
And now we're going to go into the Q&A part of the show. Our first question is from Alex Lee. So Alex, you're now a panelist, so you can unmute your microphone and open up your camera. Ask your question.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. Thanks, everybody, for the great discussion here today. I'm not in video suitable mode right now, so I'm going to leave the camera off. My question was for David regarding DCEP. Fabulous discussion and introduction. I think it went deeper than any of the dozens of very deep, supposedly deep articles about it. And what I found was really interesting is that it's not actually using any blockchain technology. And so my question is, you mentioned that that in order to mint DCEP, you would essentially, the central bank or the PBOC would essentially pause the minting of fiat renminbi or Chinese yuan, and therefore issue and mint the next, let's say, issuance of currency in DCEP rather than in paper fiat. So the question is, would you also need to do that? Would a central bank essentially and a treasury also need to do the same thing if they were actually managing the stablecoin or the digital currency on a blockchain, whether private or public?
You need to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Hi, Alex. And so let me explain. And
can you lower the camera a little bit, because we just see the top of your face?
Okay, sure.
There you go.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So why there is no blockchain in the DCP design? Actually, I think the reason is very simple, because the Chinese bank can use the blockchain, like the Bank of Japan and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and they can use like Hyperledger and or some form of Ethereum. And in China, we also have lots of companies built on blockchain platforms, including my employer. The central bank has lots of choice. But if you look at so what will the blockchain act in the DCP? So there will be several validators in the DCP when there is a blockchain. So let's consider who will be the validators. Of course, there will be central bank, and then there will be several commercial Chinese banks, and maybe some telecommunication companies in China. But if you take them all together, if you look at the credibility, the credibility of central bank is much larger than those commercial institutions. So in that sense, the introduction of blockchain doesn't improve the credibility of the DCP, because we essentially rely on the credibility of the central bank. The second point is that the Chinese central bank has no intentions to fully replace physical cash with DCP. So that means in the future, there will still be physical cash, and there will be DCP. But even before the DCP, with the development of Alipay and WeChat Pay, people use very little cash, physical cash in China. But central bank will still provide physical cash as options for people who are not very who does not own, for example, a mobile phone or who is not know technical very well. Yeah, so cash will be still exist in China in the future. So third point is that the DCP is not meant by the central bank. Commercial banks take the initiative in the issuance of DCP, because commercial banks, if they want to have some DCP, and they will initiate the issuance process, and they will give the deposit reserve to the central bank, and in exchange for the DCP. So that means the supply of DCP is determined by market demand, rather solely by the central bank. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
And the demand, thank you very much. So I understand now. So the minting will actually be done by the commercial banks, and what they're really looking to do is to use it for large institutional settlements cross-border.
Not just for wholesale use case. So currently there is the central bank has started a pilot program in China. They choose 4 cities in China. It's for retail use.
Oh, right. Yeah, like in Suzhou and.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, terrific. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much.
Our next question is coming from Amr. Amr, you need to unmute your microphone.
Sorry, I forgot. Thank you, Lou, for this opportunity to ask this question. Thibaut, I just had this quick question. So Malta seems very compelling, and the use is probably extends beyond crypto as well. I mean, I'm from emerging markets, and I know that this problem exists. It seems like an entry point for non-crypto companies is through stablecoins. I don't think anyone wants to deal with the fluctuations of Ethereum if they're going to be conducting businesses. So first of all, is Maltus kind of designed to expand into, you said SMEs, is it designed to expand into non-crypto businesses? And if so, how are we going to facilitate this access to stablecoins in all of these markets? Thibaut, you're mute just like me. So.
Yeah. So yeah, the answer is yes. We again, as I said earlier, we want to break out from crypto. There's no way for us to build a successful company if we're only relying on crypto companies, right? This is too much of a niche market. Now, that's why I mentioned that stablecoins are a game changer, because there's no way a regular company or regular SMBs just switch to crypto for the sake of switching to crypto. You need to have tangible value there. You need to have an ROI. Now, the clear benefits from stablecoins are instant and cheap payments. So yes, we are building Maltese to be the neobanks of companies, whatever kind they are. They're not supposed to be crypto native companies. Now, the key question, and that's the $1 billion question today, is how do you get them, how do you get them to actually own stablecoins? So that's the whole, fiat ramps, crypto ramp issue that we are currently struggling with. Fees are way too high today. There's no point to use this. That's challenging. There's no point for companies to use stablecoins and reduce transaction fees if you have to pay 2% in your assets to get there, right? So several options. The first thing is that we see a sharp decrease because there's an increasing competition in the RAM space, exchanges, for example. So we see that conversion fees are lower and lower. So we just need to make the onboarding process and this whole purchase process simpler, but that's a UX thing, not a technological issue. Now, the second thing that we can do, and I know that some companies in the space are exploring this, that could something that that could be something we could do as well. Is basically play on, DAI and USDC fluctuations internally, and get some benefits there to subsidize the on-ramp of the companies. So effectively, they will not pay fees to get their stable coins, and we will just have them pay a subscription, just like any regular SaaS business. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the question was really how will they get those USDC how can they actually hold them? But it seems that you rely on the fiat, fiat trans. Is it more fiat or?
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things that we, one of the initial beliefs of the crypto space was that companies will naturally accept payments because users will have them. So it's true for Bitcoin because there's some inertia. Bitcoin have been there for quite some time, but for regular users, I don't see them just get some stable coins and put them in higher savings account. It's going to be a minority of DeFi people, decentralized finance people. So I really think that's the wave of stable coins, the adoption will come from businesses. So they need to have a convenient way to access stable coins and start paying vendors and start running a payroll. Mm-hmm. So we need to make ramps, more compelling today.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tomer. Our next question is from Miklos. Miklos, unmute yourself.
Hi everybody. Thank you for the presentation. So I am from Korean Foundation. We are working on the education and promoting stable coins for the masses. And my first question is to David.
Hi.
What do you think how this DCP will be connected to the international financial system, to other other national currencies, or maybe other, let's say, USD-based stable coins? Will be some interoperability to go to other stable coins or even DeFi, or it will be just used for payments in China, like we use Alipay and WeChat Pay now?
Okay, yeah, thank you. DCP is just a digital form of Chinese renminbi. So it will not just used in payment, not domestic payments and cross-border payment, but will also used in financial transactions. For example, and people can use DCP to buy stock or bond in China. Yeah, and the Chinese government has the plans for DCP to go global, because DCP, like other digital central bank digital currency, they exist in the token systems, not in the bank account systems. So currently, if you need to move money cross-border, and you need to go through the network of correspondent banks. And in China, we have built a network of offshore clearing bank, and also since 5 years ago, the central bank has promoted the CIPS systems. That means cross-border and payment system for the Chinese yuan. But for the DCP, if it does not exist on the blockchain, it has all the very good features of blockchain. It's open for all, right? Even if you take the KYC requirement into considerations, it's open for all, not just for Chinese people, but for foreigners. You can just imagine that people in Americans can open a DCP wallet and can own DCP, and they can use DCP to buy the goods and services from the Chinese companies.
Yeah, I understand this, but just my question is that what is the government goals? So they want to go out and also they want to use the DCP in the cross-border payments and international trades and in other financial products and on the financial world.
Yes, that's the ultimate goal for the Chinese government, because Chinese government has.
So it can happen that other stablecoins will be exchangeable to DCP and then like use USD Tether and other stablecoin now.
Yes. So just imagine American citizens and it has US dollars. So if he wants to have DCP, there will be some exchange for him to buy DCP with US dollars. So usually maybe he can go to a American bank who has DCP from its Chinese counterparts. Yeah. So it will, DCP will in the future will move around global. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello?
Do we have any questions?
Yeah.
I was the next person in line. So I'm
Okay.
Ganesh. I'm a researcher at Warwick Business School, and I'm researching stable coins.
Okay.
So it's very interesting presentation. So my question to David is, given that you have, say, the central bank backing the digital currency one-to-one with sort of, say, renminbi, and then this digital currency is then given to commercial banks, can they then start lending and based on a fractional reserve system? And so if they start lending this digital currency, could you get a situation where there's more digital currency in circulation than the amount that's backed by sort of fiat sort of reserves? And my question to Thibaut is, so I find it very interesting that USDC and DAI is being used to pay foreigners. And I was wondering, is this a general case with all stable coins? So with Tether as well? And as a researcher, like, I guess it would be interesting to see like how much of the recent sort of stablecoin issuance is being driven by sort of these remittance payments and this income payments versus crypto market. Is there a sense of how to be able to figure out how much of recent stablecoin issuance is going towards sort of facilitating income payments?
Okay, thanks, Ganesh. So we'll let Dave, why don't you go first
Okay,
in
sure.
answering Ganesh's questions. We can go fast because we got a couple more questions.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I don't think there will be if a commercial bank and lend out DCP, right? So we need to take into consideration so that the lending will be very different between the account model and the token models. So in the account model, that's the mainstream model. If a bank lends some money to another companies, so if you look at the bank's balance sheet, on the asset side, it will have a new loan to banks, right, to companies. And meanwhile, on the liability side, it will have a new deposit from the companies. So the new deposit is actually money. So that's why how bank can create money through its lending business. But however, if you look at what happens in the token lending, look at what happens in DeFi or CeFi. If I lend some Bitcoin to you, I will my Bitcoin balance will reduce. Meanwhile, your Bitcoin balance will rise by the same amount. So if you look at the system, the total amount of Bitcoin remains the same. So this is what will happen in the if commercial banks lend out CBDC or DCP. Yeah.
Okay.
Hope I answer your questions. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thibaut?
Yeah. So the question was around, kind of the rationale of, well, basically, let me talk about the different kind of stablecoins that we're using. And please, Ganesh, correct me if I need a reminder of your question. So basically today we see that we feel that the use of stablecoins are strongly driven by ideology. So we initially started talking to developers team in the crypto space, and they were all about DAI, because DAI is, decentralized, because it's, was issued by a very central project in the space. What we see is, we're starting to talk with like a couple of months ago, we started to switch a little bit gears and start talking to less tech-oriented crypto companies. Those companies are using USDC for two reasons. First, they're based in the States mostly. So kind of rationale of using the USD, which everybody knows there. The second thing is it seems secure, which is not the case for DAI. So yeah, it's a trade-off. It's centrally issued, decentrally used, but at least it's backed. So you don't put your funds at risk. And USDC is by far the most widely used stablecoins on our platform, and it's used for spending. Now there's an interesting case about the USDT, which is another one. Again, strongly, usage is strongly driven by ideology. And when we talk with our users, UST is like maybe 10% of the stablecoin used on the platform. USDT is mostly used by traders to do pair trading today. So you have this kind of trading speculation connotation around it, which is not the case for USDC. So those are the main differences between those three cryptocurrencies. And if you like recent issuances, you see that DAI is not keeping up with the pace of the others. So we'll see. I feel there's this trend about using USDC because it's just efficient and not because it's ideological. So that was the first part of your question. And I think, could you maybe quickly remind me the second part?
So just quickly in terms of trying to figure out how much of stablecoin issuance is being used for income payments.
Well, on our platform, stablecoin I use like 90% for payroll, and so I'd say that's not a very precise figure, but I'd say roughly of the transactions used for actual business, 90% of the transactions, you could have a split between 50-50 vendors and payroll. And we see that payroll is increasingly, it's getting more and more trendy with our users. And now it's very hard to have a full picture of the space today. First, because analytics are still being built. We're still in very immature market, so we need some tools. I think Messari is doing a great job with that. I think they publish some data on that, stating that still less than 10% of the stablecoins issued are actually being used to run a business. So we are still a long road ahead. Stablecoins are still used mostly for pair trading as a hedge.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ganesh. And I think our last question will be Heli. Heli?
Yeah, hi. A quick one then about regulation. I live in Zug. We at the Crypto Valley Association, we have a task force for regulation for stablecoins. And I was wondering, Thibaut, how you solve that if you are doing a cross-border transfer to Europe, as the regulatory situation of stablecoin is not clear at all. How do you solve that?
Well, that's a tough one. And you're probably even more of an expert than I am, but what we see is is kind of a gray area still. If you look at France, for example, which is the current accounting and legal framework I'm the most acquainted to, you see that stablecoins, when they're backed by actual currency, are considered as foreign currencies, basically. So USDC, from an accounting point of view, that's clarified, it's considered as a foreign currency. From a regulatory point of view, it's quite unclear, but right now it's accepted. Now, the key question, and that's something which everybody is basically focusing today, even in the States, will those cryptocurrencies be considered as, again, commodity, like actual currencies or securities? If you look at DAI, maybe that's one of the reasons why people are less and less using DAI for actual spending. We have no clue. That might be a security. This is still undecided. So that's actually one of the big hurdles for stablecoins. That's why I'm so bullish on centrally issued stablecoins. We can see one of the things that's interesting. We see a lot of companies in the space starting to talk about that is because the minimum capital requirements to build a bank in Europe are so low. You need only 5 million to do that. You can picture a bank just having 5 million in reserves and basically issuing the equivalent in stablecoins, euro-backed stablecoins. And in that case, you know, if you look at the recent discussions with the European Central Bank, etc., that might be a way for Europe to get its own stable coins, to accept it as a, you know, with not so many regulatory hurdles. Quite honestly, it's still unclear. That's a hurdle. So we are starting to do some lobbying work, but we're a small company and we have bigger guys out there helping us to do that.
Okay, perfect. So thanks for the question, Heli, and thanks to everybody who joined the call. Thank you, David, Dr. Zhao, and thanks, Thibaut. Thought it was a great call. See everybody next week on Stablecoins Are Killing It, episode number 7.
Okay.
Thank you, Lou.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.